Welcome back. Um, just in case you wondered if Democrats, after my video about government narrative, decided to stop the cringe, let me show this. Choose your character. And this.
Okay, we're going to start with the chorus. Let's hear it.
You all know this. Sing it.
Yeah. Which side are you on? 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 Come all of you good workers, good news to you I tell, of how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Oh!
And this.
Trabajar, trabajar, trabajar. Pero nosotros, ellos. ¿Quiénes son ellos? Elon Musk. Mark Zuckerberg. Javier Milei. Donald Trump. ¿Dónde están los comunistas? ¡Estamos en lucha! ¡Estamos acá! ¡Hambre! ¡Nuestros pibes tienen hambre! Probably not a good idea. Everything. Yeah.
Well, the last two are actually not from here, but you get the idea, because the first two are. This time we are going to do some parallels between Trump and Orban and address the question whether what is happening in Hungary could happen also here. Let's remember that in 2010, Orban came to power for the second time, and this time he came with a two-thirds majority. This two-thirds majority allowed him to make changes in the constitution, the fundamental law of Hungary, and he didn't waste time. He moved to pack the Supreme Court and ended up appointing 5 justices, what allowed him to have control over the decisions of the Supreme Court. He imposed an age limit to get rid of all judges who could present a challenge to him, and proceeded also to limit the jurisdiction of the Constitutional Court. Then he used the IMF imposed austerity to tackle with the mismanagement of the liberal and socialists who have lost the elections of 2010. He used that as an opportunity to replace bureaucracy with, in all cases, in the Supreme Court and the bureaucracy, with people who were, above all, loyal to Fidesz, his party, and especially to him personally. Many of the people he brought to the Hungarian state had 9-year appointments, what meant that even if Orban lost the next elections, these appointments could sabotage the opposition in case they had an opportunity to get to government. And can we make parallels between Dutch cuts And what Orban did, well, yes, the test used to test uh, the test used with government officials to decide whether they are going to keep their jobs or be fired are actually not that different from the loyalty test used by the Bush administration to decide who was going to go to be part of the Paul Bremer administration in Iraq. In other words, it was a matter of loyalty with their at least their political line above technical qualities. Then we have the that Orban can, thanks to the two-thirds majority he got in 2010, and then again in 2014, and then again in 2018, and also in the last elections, Orban has gotten a lot of extraordinary powers. Like, for instance, he can amend the budget without Parliament's approval. And of course, he also has replaced the independent chair of the National Bank, which is the Hungarian Central Bank. He has replaced it with a crony with, of course, a 9-year appointment. Can we make a parallel here? Of course, here also after Trump seems to be pleased with, he seemed to have settled with Powell to allow the Federal Reserve to be independent in exchange of dropping all day programs. Now it happens that he also wants to decide monetary policy. I'm not against the president to have a say, to have an opinion about monetary policy. What I am against, and Krugman also, is that he could decide about monetary policy. It's not just that. You have that he has used extraordinary emergency powers on a dubious constitutional base to increase and reduce tariffs and also to decide cuts on appropriations that have already been decided by Congress. Because let's with respect to what Dutch is doing, let's remember that they are not. This is not a budget struggle in which Trump would have all the right to have a say, of course, because it's his vast budget and his administration. No, we are talking about the the budget already approved during the Biden administration. And on that, he cannot unilaterally make changes like Orban can. Uh, but fortunately, that is what Dodge is doing with all these findings. And of course, he cannot decide about the monetary policy because it's not part of his jurisdiction. And let's remember, it's not just the matter of Dutch making changes that are against the law. It's also the matter that because of the way these changes have been made, they are a good reason to be suspect of the numbers. For instance, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to issue, considering that first bureaucrats who were professional bureaucrats who didn't have to abide by the political line of the president. Now it happens that their job depends on precisely the opposite. Now, this is surprising that this mismanagement of the economy has led to an increase in income inequality? Of course, it's not. Is that going to be reflected in the numbers? The Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to present from now on? That's a good question. Then we also have in the case of foreign policy, how despite benefiting from the largesse of the European Union, um, not only in subsidies but also in investment, Hungary uses as parameters Xi Jinping, Erdogan from Turkey, and Putin. This is particularly alarming considering that he has pretty much made his main cause to identify the European Union with Brussels, and Brussels with illegal immigration, and illegal immigration with globalism, in a kind of message, destabilizing message that is not that different from the message promoted by Putin in the case of, for instance, we know of Le Pen in the case of France that has benefited from Putin's support, and alternative for Deutschland in the case of Germany. This is particularly worrisome because Chinese policy may become very hostile to Europe in case Putin comes out victorious from the Ukraine war, considering that China has not been able to overcome its deflation, and what Paul Krugman calls the foreign adventurism, which could be encouraged by Putin, ends up being the way to come out of of that deflation. And that, of course, it comes in direct collision to European interests. And yet, can we make here a parallel with Trump? Yes, you just have to see in the case of the Ukraine war, the shameless way Trump has sided with Putin, and the way he is undermining the European Union, which would be, in terms of values, their natural ally. Not Israel, at least not Israel until under Netanyahu, but the European Union. Now, in the we another parallel we can do is in terms of press and academia. In the case of Hungary, the press depends in a very important way from state advertising, and that has allowed Orban to control the content of presented of the Hungarian media, not in absolute terms, because especially since there was a quarrel with his old crony Simitska, he doesn't have a complete monopoly of the media, but he has a monopoly. He has a control of most of the media. But his control of the media is not limited to state advertising, of course. For instance, in the case of the newspaper Nezavatsak, that was a liberal independent newspaper, he used cronies to buy the paper, which has which was recovering from financial problems due to lower circulation, only to close it later. Or in the case of licenses, like for instance, the after Simicska, his old crony brought broke with him. Uh, for instance, his popular Class SM radio, Class SM F, Class FM radio lost its license. Are we seeing something like that here? Um, Not in such a brutal way, but we have seen the Washington Post and many people in media caving and going to Mar-a-Lago to court Donald Trump in a way that is worrisome. Now, traditional media is true that is losing ground to, for instance, the internet and to international media. But so here in the United States, the problem is not as marked as it is in Hungary, but it cannot be it can be denied. Then we have also the case of the of academia. Also, the problem is exists, but it's not. It doesn't have the same dimensions it has in Hungary, where Hungary, despite the condemnations by the European Union, closed the Central European University, a prestigious university, after alleging that it was a tool in the hands of George Soros. Which was a stupid accusation, was a blatant excuse, but that was the reason. So far, the only problems with media has been, for instance, the withdrawal of funds to Colombia because because Colombia was too critical of Israel, and that is unacceptable. You could agree or disagree with professors in Colombia, but you cannot condition funding to them abiding by specifically Donald Trump's and the party powers line or preferences in terms of foreign policy, especially when we are talking about something as questionable as Benjamin Netanyahu. Then another parallel we can do, and this is much more relevant, is the case of the little credibility the opposition has, the apathy in the Hungarian public, and the kind of message Viktor Orban has embraced. And let's remember, with respect to the latter, that in 2015 he came from being a pariah in European politics to being a champion with the Law and Order Party from Poland, when it came to organize an opposition to the European Union policy on immigration and refugees coming from Iraq and Syria in 2015. He has also embraced curiously anti-Semite and anti-Muslim positions at the same time. He has accused the European Union and George Soros of promoting illegal immigration to destroy the Christian civilization and blah blah blah, which are not very different from the lines you could hear from Stephen Miller or Bannon in the core MAGA base. Actually, even from Donald Trump himself, every time he addresses those issues. So the kind of message, the kind of anti-globalist message, and the apathy that is the risk of apathy here in the case of the United States are also parallels we can make besides the lost the poor credibility of the opposition. If you consider the the demographics of the 2024 elections, you will be able to see how the Democratic Party has lost ground in important demographics, and that's based not because these demographics disagree with their policies, with their economic policies, but because they don't give the Democrats credibility when there is opposition if with identity politics, which, by the way, is also another another of the boogeymen attacked by Orban in his messages both inside and outside Hungary. This brings me to a digression that is important. Even though Viktor Orban has benefited from the largesse of the European Union and even siphon those funds through state contracts to his cronies, he has not hesitated in attacking the European Union, as I mentioned before. So this brings the issue of voting rights. Should the European Union cut Hungary's voting rights, expel them? Expel them actually is a too worrisome is a too cumbersome process that would take too long. But suspending Hungary's voting rights is not, it's a matter of decision, and that is very important considering that the several times the Viktor Orban has blocked aid to Ukraine, so helping Vladimir Putin against the interests of the European Union and making NATO and Europe in general look weak. So if on top of that you give this bully, you keep giving this bully financial aid and voting rights, then you look extremely weak, and nobody will trust you to defend the Western values, or if you came to a state to which that depends on your subsidies to survive. It's not just in the case of Ukraine, but also in the case of energy. They are Orban has worked against European interests in order to favor a European, Russian energy company in Romania. Romania, which is very important for distribution of energy in Central Europe. So, and despite the many betrayals against the European Union, not even the conservative parties of Europe has the courage to put a stop to this autocrat who takes pride on saying that he has an illiberal democracy and that he's against the the standard of liberal democracy embraced by the West. That brings us to the question: can it happen here? Well, the people who believe that it cannot happen here rely in the judicial system, the checks and balances, and the Supreme Court. So far, it has held. But let's not forget, with respect to checks and balances, that Donald Trump fired the inspectors general before giving giving Dodge full access to the agencies of the federal government, and nothing happened. Of course, there is litigation, but litigation takes time, and by the time litigation finally gets a final answer, the damage may already be done. Then it's true, we have decentralized agencies, but Dodge is going after them. And don't forget that we have many independent judges in the judicial system. The Supreme Court, at least four judges are diehard Trumpists. So far they have said no on the issues that uh, that are affecting the future, but in decisions that affect the in short term, in decisions that affect the short term, the Supreme Court has been very generous with Donald Trump. So don't rely on the Supreme Court too much either. Why is that? Why do you think that the Supreme Court may be more generous with democratic values on issues that depend on the future? Well, because something we said before, precisely the way Donald Trump is replacing career bureaucrats with loyalists may result in that in the long term, even if a courageous democratic president comes, not one like Biden, he might find that the bureaucracy itself is working against him or her. And some say that our electoral system is too complex for Donald Trump to capture it completely. That's true, but they may capture enough to make liberal democracy ineffective. So is all this going to happen? Is still a big question. Uh, uh, the matter is that the risk is there, and the reasons given to hope that Trump is not going to become the next Orban are well-wishing, but are not fully supported by reality. So will that happen? I don't know. Nobody knows. And I guess we'll soon going to find out. With respect to Hungary, after the years covered by the book written by Paul Lenby, Orban has maintained for two more elections, because this book was written in 2017. In the 2018, 2020, and 2024 elections, uh, Orban has kept its two-term majority, which means that the discredit, because of the discredit of the opposition, apathy, or a combination of both, or probably what I am afraid the calcifying of cultural attitudes of that Orban has championed. The matter is that Orban has been able to keep even his supermajority, and he has even expanded some of his powers. For instance, now he, some of his advantages. For instance, right now he not only has solid control of Hungarian media, but has become Google's biggest advertiser in the whole European Union. Yes, with the European money, but he has. And so far the only movement that has been able with a discredited opposition, the only movement that has been able to challenge him a little bit is momentum. Yes, but momentum is still in its infancy, and it would take a lot of time before it could represent a real threat for Orban. Now, let's make another parallel so you can see that we are not addressing something new, never before seen in history. Let's go to the Weimar Republic in the case of Germany. We have economic dissatisfaction, yes, because of reparations imposed by the Allies, especially the French, because of the depression. Uh, let's not forget the case of the German hyperinflation. Inflation. We have cases of the effects of globalization in manufacturing, which can generated on top of all that additional unemployment in Germany during the Weimar Republic. We have the 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 discredited opposition in the case of Hindenburg, whose short-sightedness in order to deny the wins to the left led him to give visibility and prestige to the Nazis until he realized that he couldn't control the Nazis. But by then it was too late. Also, curiously, Hitler didn't champion only the causes of anti-Semitism, but also anti-globalism, because he wanted to get as close to autarky as possible. Um, of course, he wanted to reverse, uh, with rural conservative values, he wanted to reverse the open culture the Weimar Republic had in the 20s on social issues. He even was a champion of anti-immigration causes, because let's remember that many of the immigrants who came to Germany during the Weimar Republic were Jews and other people who came from Eastern Europe. Now, are we repeating history? In a way, yes, hopefully we can. Europe, the same way, Europe has to show more strength, not only with Orban, but for instance, it was the Olaf Scholz was a tragic feature in Germany because he was weak. He was unable to reverse the bad economic decisions taken during the Merkel administration with respect to debt, which led to underinvestment in the German economy, which made it lose competitivity. And in both the case of the economy and Ukraine, we have had to wait for Friedrich Merz to win the election, who is a conservative, to precisely reverse the bad decision, the Merkel's bad decision on the economy and Olaf Scholz's bad decision on Ukraine. I am an FDR liberal, but I wish him success because so I cannot defend Biden. I cannot defend Olaf Scholz either. Then we have also finally, almost finally, that in the case, even in the case of Putin, economic dissatisfaction could turn into illiberal values and could lead to apathy and could lead to all the things that are going to put the future of America at risk. Remember that in the case of Russia, in in 1991, the Russian people rose against the coup attempt against Gorbachev, and it was not you could not see apathy there because the people rose against the communists who wanted to topple Gorbachev. Then we have the mayhem, the economic mayhem that came with Boris Yeltsin, who moved from a communist economy to a laissez-faire economy with no controls. No surprise, we got in 1998 the meltdown of the ruble. And after all the pain the Russians suffered, after all the disappointment Russians suffered with the ruble meltdown, we got that when Putin got into power, when he replaced Yeltsin and turning started turning Russia into the autocracy it is right now, he got very little or no opposition. Let's remember that in the case of East Germany, which where the AFD have made its biggest gains, is Germany is also a victim of a German state who also took for granted that a free economy was going to integrate the former the German Democratic Republic, the part of the East Germany, which had been under Russian occupation, who where there was a lot of expectations about reunification with Western Germany. Let's not forget that it was also this huge economic disappointment, which turned these people either into apathy or into pro AFD autocratic preferences. And the message has been pretty much not economic, has been about cultural values. And finally that brings me to the worrisome scenarios I presented in my last two videos. One is apathy, low turnout, which is going to benefit the streams, especially MAGA, and therefore is going to make possible that whoever succeeds Trump, so uh, that the Democrats may not end up capitalizing on the fall of approval in the case of Trump, and a low turnout may lead to another MAGA representative replacing Trump. So Democrats should not take for granted that they are going to benefit from his loss of popularity. The other, as in the case of Kansas, as described by Thomas Frank, or in the case of East Germany, is the calcifying of cultural attitudes where people vote against his own interest because they hate what they perceive as cultural elites, liberal elites, as more hateful than the conservative or right wingers that vote against their own interests. And of course, you have the third risk is a third party that is not just a one-time spoiler, but that is big enough to stay in politics, which means that Democrats and liberal positions are going to be condemned to be a permanent minority because that would split the vote at the left or at the center left. So these are the risks. If you see the demographics of the last elections, you see very concerning trends. You also see that Kamala Harris, at first, from mid-August to September, she rose with an economic populist message that gives me hope. But when I see the DNC doubling down on identity politics, that is very concerning because remember, we could reach a point in which even if we propose the best economic plan, a real FDR narrative, that people is not going to trust us. And if that happens, that's going to be very sad, but it means that it's too late. And having said that, let me leave you with our newscast.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of this hour. Among other news,
A 366 new executive orders were released in the Oval Office yesterday morning. In the signing ceremony, 3 of them were given special consideration by President Trump. 1. The Federal Reserve will increase its strategic crypto reserve from 10% to 20% of its assets. The aforementioned assets will necessarily be denominated in $Trump meme coins. 2. State Secretary Marco Rubio will not be referred to as Little Marco or Lil Marco in official communications. 3. The White House's Lincoln bedroom from now on will be renamed as the Vladimir Putin bedroom to honor the countless contributions the President of Russia has made to the United States of America. Likewise, the Freedom of Medal will become the Vladimir Putin Medal to honor his lifetime achievements in, according to the decision, all the fields. B. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was awarded the Army, Navy, and Air Force Medal as a consolation prize for being sent to the Middle East as a decoy. Last week, he was sent with the mission of brokering a peace deal between Hamas and Israel. Unbeknownst to him, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu had already decided they had no interest in having peace with Hamas and, on the contrary, were hoping for the reignition of hostilities. We love Lil Marco. He always believes all we tell him, added President Trump. C. Elon Musk's Doge team accidentally gave access to hackers of unknown nationality to the databases of the Social Security Administration, which include the Social Security numbers and bank accounts of the beneficiaries. Nevertheless, Commissioner Leland Dudek minimized the incident. You must understand that they are kids, impulsive. Their hormones are raging. The good news is that, after tackling waste and abuse, Doge has been able to save $4.5 trillion. Precisely the amount President Trump needed to get his tax cuts approved, added the commissioner. D. Yesterday afternoon, Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele and President Donald Trump hosted Argentinian President Javier Milei. In their meeting, which took place in the Oval Office,
Presidents Bukele and Trump taught President Milei how to use meme coins properly. First, you create a crypto reserve in your central bank to buy your crypto, and then, and only then, you promote the meme coins. Otherwise, you are going to make just a few thousand instead of a few billion, added President Trump, who considered sharing this kind of know-how as part of his outreach program to presidents of underdeveloped countries. Democratic Minority Leader Jeffries hosted a press conference to announce that the time to go on the attack had come. After careful consideration, the DNC chair and I have concluded that the time to go on the attack has come. It started with the Paddle of Reckoning Day on President Trump's State of the Union. But it will only become more aggressive in the upcoming days with public pillow fights and poetry declamation in your local Starbucks. We will win. We will win. We will not rest, added the former speaker. In local news, the Trump administration has dropped an FTC lawsuit that started during the Biden era. This lawsuit sued elevator companies, cell phone manufacturers, and other goods and service providers whose products cause mental hardship or embarrassment to petty criminals who were arrested after inadvertently exposing their participation in the crime scenes. What has submitted them to emotional distress?
This has been the news of this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.